All right, so here we have our first example of proof. We are given some information and we actually need to make a change in our notes. If this line right here, M, is the midpoint of LN, instead of midpoint, we just want to say that M is the median. So if that's not what your notes say, go ahead and make that change, or maybe your notes have already been fixed. So M is the median. And then we have to prove that two angles are congruent. So let's take a look at what we know. We are given that segment LO is congruent to segment NO. So we want to find those on our figure off to the right. So here's LO and here's NO. So we're being told that those two segments are congruent. So we'll go ahead and mark that in our figure. And then they told us that M is the median. Now, if M is the median, we have to remember what the definition of median is. A median is where this line, and actually it's not M, let's make that change, it's segment OM, right there. All right, segment OM is the median of the triangle. And remember, a median hits the opposite side at its midpoint. And what's a midpoint? A midpoint cuts a segment into two congruent pieces. So we know that LM will be congruent to MN. So we can go ahead and mark that. And then we have to prove that angle OLM. Let's take a look where that is. Here's OLM. So this angle over here, L, is congruent to ONM. So we want to prove that these two bottom angles are congruent. All right, so our statements, we've got first, LO is congruent to NO. How did we know that? That was given to us. So we go ahead and fill in given. Then, in case, let's go ahead and make this match. OM is the median. We changed it up above, so we want to change it there. How did we know that OM was the median? That also was given to us. All right. Now, this next one, man, I've got all kinds of mistakes on here. We want to come up with the statement we can make knowing this reason, although instead of definition of midpoint, we want that to be definition of median. All right, so what is the definition of median? If that's our reason, what do you think the statement might be? When we thought about the definition of the median up here, we went ahead and marked that these two segments were congruent. So that's the statement that we want to make, that LM is congruent to NM. All right, and how did we know that? Definition of median. So we're good so far. All right, so what else do we know about our triangle? If you remember using the CPCTC, it'd be great if we could prove these two smaller triangles congruent, which would allow us to say that any corresponding part would be congruent, which is what we're asked to prove right here with those angles. So you got two triangles. Did you guys notice the actual median in the middle is a shared side? So that means that OM is congruent to itself. So that's the next statement we can make. We can say that OM is congruent to OM. And how did we know that? Anyone remember the reason? And hopefully you guys are getting used to this reflexive property. Anytime there's a shared side or angle, you can say it's congruent to itself using the reflexive property. So now, take a look at our triangle. We've got three sides that are congruent. So that would be side, side, side. That's enough for us to say that these two triangles are congruent. So our next statement will be triangle LOM is congruent to triangle NOM. And how did we know the triangles would be congruent? Because of our side, side, side. Now that we have congruent triangles, you can make statements saying that any piece of the triangle or any parts are congruent. So that's why our last, whatever you're trying to prove always goes on the bottom down here. This angle is congruent to this angle. And how did we know that to be true? Because of our corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. CPCTC.